Country's biggest labour federations today vowing to continue protesting until government meets their demands. Yesterday, members of Cosatu, Saftu, Fedusa and Nactu all taking to the streets countrywide. They're demanding that government honours the 2018 collective bargaining agreement by increasing their salaries. They've also demanded an end to corruption, job losses and gender-based violence. From Business Unity South Africa board member Stavros Nicolaou, good afternoon to you and welcome. Your organisation says that it sympathises with many of the issues raised by organised labour, but you were also concerned about the economic impact not only of yesterday, but what is likely to come.
Jeremy, good afternoon to you and also to all the viewers, and many thanks for this opportunity. So I think as you correctly set out and prefaced, Business Unity South Africa is sympathetic to some of the issues, and they're critical issues that Labour is raising, namely corruption, the GBV issues, and I think particularly the lack of urgency by government to set the economy in a different trajectory, and also the lack of urgency in terms of restoring a semblance of business confidence. So those are all issues that Busa is sympathetic towards and agrees with. However, what we're not in agreement with is that a national strike only worsens what is already a highly fragile state of economic affairs that the country finds itself. I think we all saw earlier this week that the lockdown and the COVID-associated fallouts from that realised a further 2.2 million job losses, which we can ill afford. And certainly a national strike at this point in time is only set to worsen that situation and harm what is already a fragile economy. And in fact, Jeremy, will do very little, we believe, to restore confidence, particularly in the eyes of both foreign and domestic investors.
I'll take the point, but it is Labour, the working class in South Africa, that finds itself at the sharp end of all of these problems. Apart from withdrawing Labour and taking to the streets, what other tools then does it have in its armoury?
So, look, Jeremy, I think that one of the upshoots or positive aspects of what we saw in COVID is we saw social partners working a lot more closely together, and certainly at an operational level when it came to things like a localization agenda, we saw at a bilateral level business and labour working a lot more closely together. So certainly one of the positives in this last 6 to 7 months tumultuous time that we faced was that social partners in many respects converged. And I think we need to use that platform to address some of the, as I said, these are critical issues that Labour, Cosatu and other labour unions are raising, and we're not disagreeing with these. I think our disagreement here is that there's an economy that's already hanging on for dear life and it's on its knees, and this could just worsen it and push it over the edge. So I would, and as business, we would rather advocate that we try and use the instruments and the platforms that exist for social partners to have this type of dialogue. But I'm going to preface that very strongly with a comment that in those discussions, we do, however, need to see greater urgency and alacrity from government around implementing what are very often low-hanging fruits. So it's all well and good saying, well, let's get together, but we also need, and all the social partners will agree with me on this, we do need to see greater urgency from government around setting the economic trajectory on a completely different path.
Fair point.
To where it is.
Urgency from government is important, but you can't make it just government's problem. You say that business and Labour are working together. I hear that all the time, both from Labour and from business. But it seems to me that the gap between the two units, the two philosophies, is as wide as ever.
So, Jeremy, I think you're always going to have those ideological differences between between business and labour, and in fact between all the different social partners. The point I was making earlier is that there have been demonstrable examples where we've converged at the time of a crisis and worked together and solved problems. I mean, a very good example of this is that at the outset of the pandemic, there was very little, if any, PPE that could be produced locally in South Africa, and we all understand, note the relevance of having PPE. And I'm pleased to say, working together under the NEDLAC banner, business and labour have delivered a number of local PPE players, either repurposed businesses or new entrepreneurs that have moved into that space. And very pleasing to see how much more PPE is now being procured through domestic entities and manufacturers that have only since the advent of the pandemic come to the fore.
Right. Stavros,
so those are examples where we can work together.
I'm going to thank you for that. You've added to the debate importantly. I guess the question is that cooperation that you talk about, is it sustainable? Are you going to keep working that way, which is absolutely critical? I appreciate you joining us. Now.